both ways. Sometimes we start off with somebody that wants, that full package, which ends up being like a needle in a haystack. So then what we kind of do is, as we look at the description, see if we can find that person initially that has that full skill set, and then if we can't, we do try to, piece people together, match them up as teams, send somebody that's really strong at back-end development, followed up with somebody that's really strong at front-end development. So by hiring those two people, they can work together to do the project, but it's not an all-in-one sort of thing.
Yeah. What raises that second part of the question would be that too. We in our web development class kind of developed teams that they actually learn together.
Yeah.
And so that we found that the dynamics of them sometimes, with as a working teams, some have better skills in terms of like design, other ones are graphic design, some are better programmers or coders.
Yeah.
But we found that several people can work really well together. Do you ever consider like,
Representing a
team representing a team applying for a job?
We do it sometimes. It's not as frequent as the individual roles. Usually, for at least freelance stuff or project work, usually a client is coming to us because they're in the weeds and they need someone to do an HTML email, or you know what I mean? So it's very targeted. So for the most part, we look for individuals. Now, that being said, that information when we register someone to, I've done interviews where I register 2 people at once, you know what I mean? And let them know that I'm going to be calling them about individual jobs, but it's nice to know what they worked on together, what their roles were. So if we get an opportunity where we could pitch them as a team, it's nice to be able to make that case essentially. The times it's most successful is when the people that are coming in as a team or as a group understand and are okay with the fact that we call them about individual gigs, but know that there might be that sort of perfect storm where we've got something that they're needed for. And then we also have things where, we placed a candidate on a freelance gig. He's a Flash guy, and he'd been doing, just sort of piecemeal work here and there for this client. And then a big project came in, and he needed help. You know what I mean? So that's and he needed to create a team. So that's another example where we might go to someone where we know a group of people already that work really well together. Obviously, there's the technical requirements for what it was. But we would call a group of people we know, or we could say to them, hey, we've got a group of candidates that have been working together for a year now. They know how to work with each other. They know how to communicate. This is their skill set. You should talk to them. So we can also be a help there.
I'm just curious, with the job situation as it is right now, and a lot of companies outsourcing their low-end positions, what do you see for the entry-level market right now for people just coming out of college or still in college wanting to do just a summer job or something like that? Do those exist?
It is starting to pick back up a little bit. It is hard for the junior level people to get the foot in the door, which is why it's so vital to have that internship and real work experience under your belt that you can get here, kind of call out to that in both your portfolio and your resume. We had another part of our process I should mention too is that all of our new candidates that come in, we do have a weekly talent update. It's an email that goes out to our entire client list that kind of highlights some of the latest and greatest talent that we met with. And we found it really successful with our junior candidates. They get put on there, and then we might be working on a job. We just happened with the company Flow Play that was looking for a senior level Flash engineering guy, and that was the job we're working on. Well, I put in a junior level software engineer on the talent update. They saw that and said, hey, I know we're working on this role, but I kind of like this junior guy. Maybe he's somebody we can train and mentor to, fill this type of role eventually. We still want the senior guy, but maybe we can pair them together. So that's the type of thing that I'm seeing more with the junior level people. And, some of the more harder technologies, I guess, that we found to place are the .NET, Java developers, backend PHP stuff. It seems like those people just go super fast. So companies are starting to really open their eyes more to getting that junior talent, locking them in, training them, developing them, kind of establishing more of, like the work you saw, those people there stick with companies for a long period of time, rather than the people that kind of jump every couple of years. So it's been really interesting. I don't know. Have you seen?
It's definitely picking up. We're seeing more full-time placements than we were a year or two ago. You know, I'd say with, you know, junior, more entry-level positions, we can't, you know, we work on those, we fill those, and great things happen like that story. You know, something to keep in mind as you're doing your search is, you know, with a staffing agency, clients are paying to work with us, right? They're paying a premium to work with a staffing agency. So sometimes they come to us for their more specialized positions, roles where they feel like they did a good search for entry-level candidates on their own. They may want to, you know, make the savings of working with them directly rather than working with an agency. So we don't work on as many of those roles, at least initially. That being said, we love meeting with candidates that are in that type of position, as long as they're realistic about the, you know, the frequency of the jobs that we're going to be getting. We can really be a guide on, you know, building portfolios that depending on the work that you're doing. I'd say with, you know, junior, more entry-level candidates that we work with, you know, portfolio is everything, right? Because, you know, solid internships are awesome too, but portfolio is everything because that's really going to give a client an idea of what someone is capable of. So, you know, encourage candidates to do things like, you know, pro bono projects that, you know, maybe, you know, finding clients on your own, creating a website for them that shows your skills. So it builds up that freelance work that you're doing, that's professional work, but can sort of build that case for the experience that you have. It makes us easier to give a specific example of, here's a freelance project that he did. The client is one of his references. You know, he did everything on time, on budget. They said nothing but wonderful things about this project, and it's a professional project that you have in your portfolio then. And that helps us build the case for those jobs where the client's looking for someone that has, you know, a little bit more experience, and we can talk about the freelance projects that you've done and make a case for you that way.
I'd like to just make a comment on what you guys are talking about. Your presentation about the direct contact with both the client and the job seeker is very nice to hear, because I've got experience with a number of different agencies that they come to you blind, they send you a posting that has nothing to do with your skill set.
Yeah.
It's like they haven't read your resume at all, and then they want to lock you in for a lowball price before you've even contacted or had any contact with the employer to find out what the job's about.
Right.
You guys sound like the exact mirror opposite of that, and I'm very appreciative.
Oh, good. Well, we try to be. I mean, I came through Creative Circle as a candidate myself last year when I was looking to transition out of
You
radio.
really have to.
I know. I was looking to transition out of radio and just kind of wanted to see what was out there before I came on internally. And it's a really good process. That's really important why we need everybody in person. Because looking at the resume is one thing, and I'm sure this happens with employers a lot. You see one thing on a sheet of paper, but it doesn't translate into exactly what you're looking to do. So we have that conversation, go through your projects. I always love to ask, okay, I see what you've done. Where do you want to go? What sort of opportunities do you want to get into? Yes, you can work with all these different languages and technologies. Which ones are your favorite? And then we can kind of focus the job search more on that thing. As far as the blind pitching goes, that's super frustrating. So even whenever we have a job, we always call people and talk about it first. Like if I have even something that might be kind of a little bit out of your skill set, or a little bit lower than the price you're willing to make, we'll always have a conversation about it first. I'll say, you know, hey, I know you love the back end development. This one's kind of a front end, back end combo. Here's a little bit more about the job. Here's the contract length. What do you think? Are you doing anything right now? Is this a project you want to jump on? Okay. We always have your salary range in our system as far as what your preferences are. So we'll only call you about stuff that's in that range, or maybe on the very rare occasion, stuff that's a little bit outside that range, just at the shop you might be, you know, dying to get your foot in the door at that company or something.
Right, like if someone's really interested in gaming, and it's $5,000 less a year than they want to make, but we know that person wants to break into the gaming industry.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's easy.
yeah,
And there's no negative to turning things down with us. If it's an opportunity or a price that you're not comfortable with, totally cool. We want to place you in situations and positions that is going to help grow your career, that you're going to be happy in, because then you'll stay there longer. Makes it you look good, makes us look good. So it's really about, we take a more personalized approach finding that good match than some other, I guess, headhunters might do.
If someone's transitioning from one career into another, and they've had maybe, 10, 20 years in something that's not related to what they're studying now at school, how should that be put on a resume?
That's a really good question. I've met with quite a few people that have done that. And if you fully detail out in your resume every single job that you've ever done in your entire life to, when you were serving ice cream at Baskin Robbins, that's really not what they're looking for. Only relevant experience as to where you're looking to go in your career. Now, if you have a long job history in doing something like, this is not our realm, but like photography, and now you want to go more into video editing. I mean, those two career paths are somewhat related. I might just kind of do a one line about those, like I was the lead photographer for Time Magazine from this date to this date. No need to do the big descriptions and bullet points for that. Try to keep the resume to 1 to 2 pages if you can, and really focus on that experience as where you're looking to go. I mean, kind of knowing some of your background, some of your past history is great, and it appeals to some clients more than others. It's good to keep on there, but not in as long of a form as you would in the experience that you're going into.
Yeah, I would say it's about finding your balance between, the old stuff versus the new stuff. Depending on how much new stuff there is, the older work experience might get minimized the more new experience there is. But there is something to be said for proven track history of working successfully. So it's important, that clients know that the last job someone had, they stayed there for 7 years, and that they stick and they work positively with a specific company. I mean, that's good information. That's sort of back to almost then the soft skills. The old work history becomes almost a soft skill at that point, right? That you have worked professionally with people, have great references. So it goes to that. But then depending on, again with your example of someone wanting to get into video editing and into doing something else, how much video editing, freelance work you have that you can touch on in the resume, because that's going to be more pertinent to the jobs that you're applying to. More the better, right? But then also to, make sure that people know that, you have proven track record is going to be important as well.
Okay, so it should be mentioned, but not really, if it's totally unrelated to what you're applying for. I guess what I'm saying is a lot of students are going back, they're changing, they've been forced for whatever reasons to find new careers. And I'll have students come to me with great, background, but it's just unrelated to what they're studying now. So,
I think it's good to keep it on there, because you don't want to totally negate all of that time and effort and energy that you put into those positions.
but maybe mention that you're making this transition now.
Yeah, and I think that's could be a great thing. I'm not a huge objective person for resumes, but I think that there's a place for them when you have some explaining to do, right? So it's like proven industry professional in blank, made transition to web development, talk about the studies there, and then go into the school projects that you've worked on and internships you've had, and then walk through, in short bullet points, the professional experience prior to that. When I meet with a candidate that is a designer and they've been designing since they got out of the Art Institute, do they need an objective portion where they say that their objective is to be a designer? I don't think so. I think it's redundant. But I think that it does make sense when you want to. I think a lot of what I see with clients is people need to tell a story to someone on a resume, right? You have that one page to see what someone is and why they're there and why they're applying to it. And unless that story is clear quickly, people move on. So if someone's been a designer for 10 years and it's obvious that that's their story, they're a designer, then it's a little easier. But if there is that transition, the story becomes a little bit more important. You know, what the motivation is, what the work that they've been doing is, how they got interested in it, and why they made the change.
Well, she kind of asked the question pretty much I had. I worked in retail for the last 5 years. Before that, I used to work with computers a lot, and I'm in school studying IT, but all my experience is retail.
Yeah.
So when I apply for a job, I wouldn't want the people to see that I work in retail. It's completely unrelated to the field I'm studying right now. So how would I do that, apply for a job? And I have a great people skill, you know, I have great communication skill. That's what retail taught me. But the other time, they don't want to see that on the resume.
Yeah, I mean, I would keep it to like one line, like the company that you work for, and then the position and the dates. Because it does really speak to that soft skill. As you mentioned, your great communication skills, you're a people person. I don't think I've met anyone in retail that hasn't been a people person. And I've always been a big fan of seeing that on resumes, I think, from the food service industry. And I think that, you know, having that background and knowing what people have to go through to, you know, keep their cool in some situations, really, I mean, it calls out to me because I've been there, I've done that. Now, obviously, I'm in a different position, but it's not to say that those hiring managers are gonna, you know, aren't gonna notice that too. So I wouldn't necessarily spend a lot of space on the page, but I mean, I would still keep it on there, especially if, like Kirsten said, if it's somewhere that you've been working at for like a year plus.
Yeah.
If it's just been like seasonal retail gigs, I wouldn't necessarily worry about it.
Or you can generalize about it. And I think that sense of humor goes a long way with that sort of stuff. I had a candidate, I think she just gotten out of school and throughout school and studies and internships and that sort of stuff. And she did have a portfolio of schoolwork. She had been working at Starbucks, so she listed all the more pertinent info on top of her resume. And then she listed 4 years at Starbucks because she worked there part-time throughout school. And then for basically the skill that she had, she said something like, learned how to have a smile on my face at 5 in the morning. You know what I mean? And it was cute. You know, you just sort of smile, you know that she worked through school. It was charming, you know, and it also showed that she's working, she's showing up for work, you know, and it's, I don't know, it's just, it endears you to someone, you know. So I think that it's good to mention it, you know, to think of a creative way to say how it will inform your career moving forward, and sort of hitting that point quickly and then moving on.
And who's to say, you know, Nordstrom or some other e-commerce
They love that.
retailer doesn't need a web developer, you know? So having that background helps too. Mike?
I was just curious what technologies stick in your mind as being most requested for web design out of Drupal, Joomla, and WordPress?
We get Drupal.
Drupal? Is that one the one
Drupal,
that's
yeah.
requested the
And we
most?
get them all, but Drupal is like when we get a Drupal job, we're like, oh, you know what I mean? Because it's hard to find people that have work experience and that customize Drupal, yeah, that are available. Yeah, Drupal we get a lot of.
Especially Drupal 7, 6 and 7, we're seeing requests for that now too. But yeah, out of all of the CMS platforms, Drupal, Expression Engine even too, sometimes.
For what?
Expression Engine,
Okay.
sometimes as well. As far
There's
as,
Sitecore too, which is really hard to find people that have done that. Sitecore,
Never heard of it.
yeah.
I know. Neither would I, yeah. There's like one person in the world that's done it.
Yeah.
Are they working?
Yeah, they're really busy.
Brian, did you have it?
Well, I was just going to ask, I mean, I know these gigs that you're placing for paid positions and you know, contract or full-time work, but are there times where you see, or in talking to clients, you hear about internships or things that, you know, maybe, you know, not really the gig itself, but something that's happening on the side that you're looking for, you know, maybe Rebecca could help you guys with, or that we could.
Sure, absolutely. It's really good for us to have those types of contacts and someone that would be a good point person for internship type opportunities that we would get. We do get them sometimes. And oftentimes, you know, depending on the client, you know, we also just place them in what the candidate and the client work directly on. You know, I actually placed a girl, this was a couple of years ago, on a project with a client he was one of our bigger clients, but his wife was starting a boutique, right? And he's like, do you have anyone that wants to build a website and put it on their portfolio? And it's sort of give and take, I'll give someone a chance. And, you know, we're not charging for this, we just made the connection and move on from there, so we definitely do that. It's not like an everyday thing, but we definitely do it. We do hear about internships, and oftentimes, you know, the people that we've brought in may not be interested in an unpaid internship or a paid internship, you know, so then we'll go to our contacts like Rebecca and say, hey, do you have anyone that would be good for this? So, absolutely.
I kind of had another one. Since you do a lot of short-term projects, how on your resume, or what's the best way to present that when you're out looking for a job? Because, for instance, I just did a 5-week contract. Okay, it's done. I've moved on. But I've had contracts with Microsoft for 5 years, even though I have to do my 100-day break, and I'm there and back, you know, but they kept bringing me back to stay through. So it's like, okay, it looks like I have some long-term stuff, even though they're private contracts, and I have a 5-week thing here, like, it looks like I'm not dedicated.
Right.
Yeah.
When in fact, I truly am. So how do you present that to somebody when you're looking for a job, so it doesn't look like you're just a slave?
Right. I would say, some of our candidates, it depends. Some of our candidates, do you have your name for your freelance business that you work under, or is it just freelance clients that you have?
Well, usually I work through agencies.
Okay. So I would say freelance contract work from the date that you started freelancing and contracting through present. And then I'd list the companies that you've done different gigs with, just to show that you've been doing contract work. And then I'd list the longer term opportunities below that.
So it's a little more complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see that a lot, especially designers, they say like freelance graphic designer, 1998 to present, have worked with this company, these clients, and then below that they go into their more contract work. As far as the Microsoft stuff goes, I saw somebody that read me yesterday that laid it out kind of uniquely that I've never seen. They said Microsoft as like the main job title, and then they said A-contractor, this project from this date to this date, this project from this date to this date. So they're calling it out as an A-, which means you need to take your 100-day break or whatever. I feel like everybody, at least in this job market, knows what that means. And it's like, okay, she's an A-, she didn't leave because of anything wrong, she left because she had to.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it also depends. I mean, I definitely encourage people that I work with to have a couple different versions of their resume, because it depends on what you want and or what you're applying for. Because an agency client of ours is probably, this is a generalization, but depending on the freelance work you've been doing, might be more interested in the freelance gigs that you've had rather than the Microsoft work. Some of our clients that aren't Microsoft see Microsoft, and they wonder, is this person going to be able to work in a smaller environment? You know, do they just know the Microsoft way? Are they going to be able to sort of assimilate in our small agency environment? So it's nice to highlight in the beginning the contract stuff. For a Microsoft job, that might be the opposite, you know? So it's about not only, again, telling that story, but telling the right story at the right time to the right person, you know?
So, okay, so when you put your alerts out, though, you're not saying this is a job with Microsoft necessarily. The only key to that alert might say, Microsoft, experience would be for something like that. I mean, that's my clue that it's actually at Microsoft.
Yeah, when we, sorry to interrupt, but, before we ever present anyone for the job, we have that conversation, we'll tell you who the client is, as long as you've already gone through the process or registered with Creative Circle. So that's when, we can say, okay, I want to present you this job, and you can say, actually, I have a resume that's more formatted to Microsoft, or let me put something together, can I email it to you before you present me?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, like with your alerts, would it be better to attach that to a resume?
You can do that. For sure. Or you can say, I did a refresh with Liz or Annie or Kristen. I have 2 resumes on file. I think the Microsoft resume would be better, but let me know. That kind of
So
thing.
you would have some
We would know, yeah, oh, I have candidates that have 5 different resumes, you know, saved in a folder with their name, and I'll have to ask them before I send their information, like, you want your project management account management resume? You want your biz dev account management resume? You know what I mean? And you just go through and make sure you're sending the right one, and, you know, get little sound bites that maybe might be, you know, good to mention for that job.
Any other questions? Comments, concerns?
In terms of like the fee, when you get a job, and obviously the agency has, you know, by contract a certain amount. What happens with a, like you said, you place full-time people
Yep.
with jobs? Is that just like a flat fee then?
For full-time placements, your annual salary is your annual salary. Whatever range that you've told us you want to make, we always try to get to your goal. It's a dollar amount that we talk to you about first before we present it to that client. So that is your full-time salary, free employee, full-time placements. You are an employee of that company just like any traditional full-time job. So eligible for their benefits, 401k, vacation, whatever sort of packaging they have. Kind of where Creative Circle comes in is we have agreements in place with our clients for what we consider like a placement fee. And they're different all across the board. But that's always pre-negotiated before we ever get a full-time job opportunity. So the company is already completely comfortable with that. That's not a concern as to, you know, who they
Oh, so the actual employee doesn't
No, nothing
pay,
more
it's the
cost to you.
employer that pays?
Yeah, and same thing with freelance too. Whatever rate we talk to you about is your take-home pay.
Hmm.
It's never like there's a Creative Circle line item on your paycheck that you're writing.
Yeah. There are some agencies that do have that.
No doubt.
Like,
Yeah.
well, I'm thinking temp agency, kind of like, you know, slash,
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, you'll notice definitely, and it depends on as far as for rate stuff, hourly work, you'll notice depending on, you know, what your hourly rates are for a staffing agency, they often might be less an hour, than you would make directly. The more you charge, the more you sort of notice it, you know? So, and that's certainly gonna cost you to establish what you can pay, you know, prior to sending your information to clients. So you know what you're getting into, you know what I mean? But, people do notice that. I mean, if you're talking sort of, what is the downside, right? It would be that maybe, you know, if you've gone, done business development, found that client on your own, gone in there, got in front of the right person, got your resume there, got in the interview, you might be making $5 more an hour. Who knows, right? Maybe not. But that's something that, you know, to definitely think about our clients to notice it depending on what their rate expectations are. But for salary, it doesn't seem to ever be having an issue with clients, you know, so established, you know, when they're working with us, with the processes, and we're sending candidates with our salary range, so they know that there shouldn't be any surprises. Sometimes there are, but there shouldn't be.
Thank you.
Well, we're at our time. I'm just gonna keep an eye out for the pizza. It's not here yet. It should be here any moment. So, speak of pizza out of here. That's the forward I have. Thanks, David. Are you gonna stay? So we'll just have some time to mix with Annie and Kirsten and find out more specific questions if you have them for them. I did ask them about LinkedIn, and they're very happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. So do make that connection. And like Chris was saying, you know, if you haven't got in for an interview, now might be a good time to schedule. Yeah, they seem like nice people. So enjoy pizza. Again, thank you to the club for sponsoring the pizza. If you have potluck stuff that you brought, this was our first kickoff for the potluck, so don't feel like you're missing something if you didn't bring anything. But if you do have stuff, just put it up there on the table. Go from there. Great.
You guys, when you reach out over email, definitely mention that you were here, because that'll be just good for us to have that context right away.
Oh, it's over.
Different names, same cards.
That's where we're back.
We are at a new address, about a block and a half away. Yeah, so you can, anytime my guess is Sarah or Laura. Yeah, so definitely email me and Annie.
Got a little time now, so what?
Is so key. You're
So you'll start getting
years later, you know what I mean? And that types of it's really important for us to make sure that we can march and, so we'll make sure that, you know, your class or one of the recruiters is really
Good, okay, hey, are you still?
Excellent. Oh. Sometimes just asking someone who doesn't know. That's right, yeah.
Do everything you can print,
That was great.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm on the
Fresh and
refreshing my IT.
Okay, great. Wow. Okay. Being technical knowledge, I always admire that story about melding the two, you know?
No, I've never seen that before.
That's great. So do you design or do you want to get more into, just, you know, straight up?
I like the guy that got real into the.
Well, no, I have 5 years in the system administration.
Exactly.
Well, I guess
But that's oh yeah, good. And you know, especially
someone that understands what you're asking them
sorted by the number, pull those things up. Thank you. Yeah, there's questions.
Was it the same book?
On the
Was that conference for BIT?
Yeah, absolutely. Smart.
That's for the.
Compliance knowledge, you've been doing this for however many years, like, just so you know, that you understand what the newest
No, the book that I bought was changed.
I know, the second you think you want to keep this cutting edge on, you know, some new development skills, it's like daily or you know, so. Yeah, yeah.